Hi, I'm Amy Kelly. I've got a brilliant video for you this week. I've got a really quick, easy upcycling do-it-yourself slug trap project for you, and I am bringing the science. I have done a test to find out which are the best and worst beers to use in your slug traps, so you will never waste your money on bad beer slug traps again. One of the questions I'm hoping to answer in this video is whether non-alcoholic beer works as well as alcoholic beer. And I've done a little side test to see whether beer is even the best thing for your slug trap. So please do like and subscribe if you haven't already. I've got loads more videos to show you. Right now, let's dive into the world of slugs and snails. Last week I did a video which talked about different ways that you can keep slugs away from your crops, and one of the things that I mentioned was beer traps. Now, I did not realise that beer traps were a controversial subject, but I have had loads of questions and comments from people about what kind of beer to use and whether they're even effective at all. And I just had no idea that this was going to open up such a can of worms. So to settle this debate scientifically, I have set up an experiment here at the plot to test lots of different beers and find out which of them is the most effective, which of them attracts the most slugs, and that will hopefully settle the debate once and for all. So for our slug experiment, what I did was bought lots of different beers, lots of identical beer traps. Now these are plastic beer traps, they're not ones that I would normally use, but because I'm testing so many different beers and I want it to be an accurate test, it was really important that all of the traps were exactly the same and that I could actually see what got caught in them so that I could keep track of what was happening. So all of the beer traps are the same, all of the beers are different. One of the questions I'm hoping to answer in this video is whether non-alcoholic beer is as effective at attracting slugs as alcoholic beer. So to test this out, we've got three different doubles. We've got Guinness, we've got Peroni, and we've got Stella Artois. There's an alcoholic and a non-alcoholic version of all three of these beers. The slug traps that have the two doubles in it are within inches of each other. So the alcoholic and non-alcoholic Guinness are right next to each other, the alcoholic and non-alcoholic Stella are right next to each other, and the alcoholic and non-alcoholic Peroni are right next to each other. So this is as fair a contrast as we can possibly have. All of the beer traps have been filled up in the same way. All of them have been scattered around one side of my allotment for 2 nights and then repositioned on the other side of the allotment for 2 nights. So everybody has got as fair a chance as possible to get as many slugs as possible. And believe me, it has been a wild year for slugs, so there are plenty out there to be attracted. So we've got lots of different beer varieties that we're trying. There is the Thai Sing beer, Heineken beer, Cobra beer, Staropramen beer from Prague, Bavarian beer from Holland, Budweiser beer, and Corona beer. All of the traps have been filled with the different beers and placed all around the allotment, but there is also a ringer. The very clever people at Oregon State University in America were doing research into what is most attractive to slugs and snails, with the idea that it could be used then to help protect crops, using it as a lure or whatever they were going to do with it. So they got loads of different things: hosta leaves, cucumbers, strawberries, bread dough, beer, everything you can think of that a snail might ever like to eat, and they tested them all out to see what was the most attractive. And by far the most attractive thing to the slugs and snails was bread dough, fresh, unbaked bread dough. Now, here's the catch. This was not a study to find out the best thing for a trap. It was a study to find out the best thing just to get them all to come and eat it. A lump of bread dough sitting in your garden is not going to stop the slugs in any way, shape or form. They are just going to come and have a wonderful time and eat it and then slime their way off again and go and eat your crops. So how could I test whether bread dough was an effective way to trap slugs and snails in your garden? Well, what I did was I took 200 mils of lukewarm water, I took a spoonful of plain flour, a spoonful of sugar, and about half a sachet of dried yeast. So just a little tiny bit of dried yeast very cheap, readily available from most supermarkets and grocery stores. And I mixed that all together. It's important that your mixture is just sort of tepid, like body temperature, warm room temperature. Too cold and the yeast won't activate, too warm and you'll kill the yeast. So not boiling water, not fridge cold water. Stir it all together and you have got liquid runny bread dough substitute. So I filled one of my traps with that and then left everything for 2 nights, came back, moved them all to the other side of the allotment, left them there for 2 nights, and then I counted up the results. As promised, I'm going to show you how to make a bird safe slug trap using nothing but any old bottle that you happen to have, any old plastic bottle, and a pair of scissors. Really quick, easy upcycling project. So the first thing you're going to do is cut the bottom third off of your bottle. I like to squeeze the air out of the bottle. Then you can pinch it together like that, and it makes it nice and safe and easy to cut. Now we've got a little container, and that is what the beer is going to go into. That's going to be buried under the soil. Now you've got the top part of the bottle left. It's really simple. You're just going to take your scissors and slice a couple of inches from the top of the bottle there. I'm going to make 4 cuts like that. So that's it, you've cut 4 cuts into the bottom of the bottle so that now it'll fit over the base like that. So all we're going to do is just extend 2 of the cuts. So you're cutting out a little archway in the bottle on 2 sides. So now when you put the top onto the bottom, there is enough of a hole for your slugs and snails to get in, but too small of a hole for a bird or a hedgehog or any other non-target animal to get in. So this is perfectly safe for birds and hedgehogs. To use this trap, all you do is bury the lower section, put your beer in, and then slip the top on. All of the traps have been in place now for 4 days, so I have got the delightful job now of straining out all of the liquid and counting up how many slugs are in each of the traps. And I forgot to bring my gloves today, so yeah, it's going to be slimy. I'll show you the results in just a moment. After having strained all of my slugs and washed my hands really thoroughly, I can tell you that the worst performing beer in my test was Peroni 0% alcohol. Over the course of the 4 days, absolutely zero, no slugs, no snails went into this beer trap. Now, just a few inches away from that trap was the trap containing the alcoholic version of Peroni. Now, this was one of the best beers in our test. It came equal third, catching 10 slugs over the duration of the test. So that really conclusive. Alcohol, 10 slugs, non-alcohol, no slugs. Definitely the alcoholic version of Peroni, far superior for attracting slugs. But that wasn't the only non-alcoholic beer that we were testing. So how did our other 2 do? The zero alcohol version of Stella Artois did actually manage to catch 1 small slug during the test, but that was still a much poorer result than the alcoholic version of Stella Artois, which managed to catch 4 slugs. Now again, these traps were just inches apart from each other. Whenever we moved one trap, we moved the other. My allotment is right beside a recreational airfield, so if you're hearing helicopters and biplanes and stuff going overhead, yeah, that's because they're taking off and landing just over that way, so I'm sorry about that. Definite preference of the slugs for the alcoholic version. Again, the alcoholic and non-alcoholic traps were just inches apart from each other the whole way through the test. So if there was any slugs in the vicinity, they should have been equally attracted to both of these if they were equally attractive. The fact that this one has 4 times as many slugs definitely tells you that that non-alcoholic one is less effective. Now we are in the north of Ireland, and my Brian, who is a Northern Irish native, was adamant that the Irish slugs are going to prefer Guinness. So we used a Guinness 0% alcohol and a what we call full fat Guinness, an alcoholic Guinness. The Guinness Zero was definitely the best performing of the non-alcoholic beers. It managed to catch 6 slugs, which was actually better than some of the alcoholic beers that we tested. The alcoholic Guinness, on the other hand, caught 10 slugs. So again, really clear preference of the Slugs and Snails for the alcoholic over the non-alcoholic. So I think that pretty conclusively answers the question of whether non-alcoholic beer is good for slug traps. In general, no, you're better off to go with the alcoholic version. But which alcoholic version, and is beer even the best thing for your slug traps? I won't keep you in suspense any longer. I am going to run through the beers here in reverse order. So of the remaining beers, the one that the slugs liked the least was Budweiser. Tasty beer for humans, but apparently not the slugs' favourite. This only caught 2 slugs over the duration of our test. Heineken was the next best, which caught 4 slugs over the 4 days. Cobra and Corona beer both caught 6 slugs each, which is the same number as the non-alcoholic Guinness. The Sing or Singer beer from Thailand caught 8 slugs. The Staropramen came in 4th, catching 9 slugs. Alcoholic Peroni and alcoholic Guinness each caught 10 slugs over the duration of our test. And the best performing beer, catching a whopping 14 slugs over the duration of our test, is the Bavaria beer from Holland. Now this was definitely the slugs' favourite beer, but all of our beer scores are trumped by the 16 slugs caught by my very inexpensive yeast mix. Well, Oregon State University, I'm sure you'll be delighted to know that our slugs here in the north of Ireland mirrored your lab results. They absolutely adored the yeast mix, with 16 slugs going into that trap, which is by far our winner. So we have all been using beer in our slug traps forever, and it's not the most effective thing that we could be using, and it's certainly not the cheapest. I mean, these beers are, nearly £2 to £4 something. That's an expensive way to get rid of slugs, and frankly, a waste of delicious beer. So from now on, I'll be keeping that for me, and I'll be making my yeast mix for the slugs because it appears to be sluggy ambrosia. It's cheaper, it's better for the environment because I can make it myself at home, no food miles there, and they prefer it. Why wouldn't you use the flour and yeast mix and save the beer for yourself? Sounds like a win-win to me. Hopefully that is the end of Sluggate, and I have resolved the controversy that I accidentally started. Slugs are an important part of our ecosystem. Slugs and snails are a food source for birds and other animals. We do need some of them, but I think keeping them away from our crops that we've worked so hard for, that are there to feed us, is reasonable. Please be thoughtful of birds and other non-target animals. Make sure whatever you're doing is going to be safe for birds and other animals. Please consider using the yeasty mix because it's just better in every respect, better for the environment, better for the slugs. More beer for me. And please make sure you watch next week because I've got a really interesting video. It's something a little bit different. I have been harvesting the last of my carrots for this year, and carrots are a crop where most of us just eat the root and throw away the leaves, which is a huge mistake. The leaves and stems are absolutely edible. I promise you, I've got some really quick, absolutely delicious recipes. I made some of them for Brian and he couldn't believe that they were carrot leaves. He said they were absolutely gorgeous. So please look for next week's video. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. I've got loads more coming up for you. I've got how to prepare your houseplants for the winter. I've got crops that you can sow in October and November. We've got loads coming up. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you again next week, and happy gardening.